I'm Brian Van, SportbikeTrackGear.com, and today we're going to attempt the 0305 R6 throttle tube mod on our 2018 Kawasaki Ninja 400 STG project bike. The concept here is to shorten the throttle throw. Okay, I found this through one of our customers, Juan, in Kansas City. He purchased the 03 to 05 Motion Pro nylon throttle tube for the R6 to install on his Ninja 400 to reduce the throttle throw, get you a little quicker turn throttle, if you will. Okay, I've got a piece of pinstriping that I put on the bar end and the end of my grip here. It still has a stock tube in it right now, and let's kind of get an idea of how far this is. Okay. So you can see, you know, right there, that's basically about a quarter, right? Roughly. And we'll do this same measurement, right? And this isn't precision, of course, after we install the throttle tube. Okay, before I go any farther, this is one of those at your own risk things. You're putting a part on this bike that is not technically listed to be installed on this bike. I'm going to cover the steps that we're going to use to put it on our Ninja 400, right? If you choose to do it on yours, you know, make sure with the throttle, it's so important, okay? Never do a mod where you eliminate one of the throttle cables. That is really not smart, okay? You need to have that return cable on there. That is super important, safety. It's also critical that you have a snap back return like that, okay? Don't do anything ever to the controls of your bike, the throttle on your bike, that restricts that throttle return or could possibly cause it to stick. Remember, you decide to put this on your bike, that's something that you're doing on your own. I'm just showing you what we're doing on our project bike here. Okay, let's jump right in. I've already got a set of grips installed here, so I'm gonna try and preserve that. Start by taking the bar end off. There's a little bit of factory thread locker that's on this. If you want, you can put a little thread locker back on that when you reinstall. To try and preserve my grip here, I'm going to use a blowgun to hopefully inflate it and help me get it off here. With the aluminum rings on the driven D-access grips, as you can see, that makes this a little more interesting, okay? It actually blew that thing up like a balloon, which is kind of cool. Just need to get the end to come off here. Clearly it's released all the grip glue. It's gonna be, oh look at that, that's pretty cool. Let's give this a shot again. That was interesting. Okay, good news is I saved my grip, so I'm gonna be able to put that back on. Okay, now you need to remove the two Phillips screws that hold the halves of the throttle assembly together. Now split the halves. This will stay with the bike because of the kill switch and starter button. This half pulls right off. The little guide for the throttle cables actually shot out of there. Okay, I'll show you. Put that back in a minute. We'll pick that up, put it to the side, and now we have the throttle cables themselves, okay? The one with the adjuster goes towards the front. The one without is on the back. Slip that off. Now we'll compare the two tubes. They definitely look a little different. You can clearly see that. You'll also note that the Motion Pro one is a closed end. Well, it's probably like that because this fits maybe some off-road bikes too, okay? To get that off, and that's just lightly glued in there, you need to get something that has enough length to push that out and just break the glue. I will just mock it up. All right, slides over, no problem. Let's kind of compare the length of the two. You're not going to have this ring any longer, okay, so it's going to make installing the grip, just a little bit different. You want to be careful that you don't slide the grip on too far so that it interacts with the actual halves of the throttle itself, because that could create sticking and issues, so be very cognizant of that. Okay, now I'm just going to slip everything together and just kind of mock this up, right? There's some other steps that I want to take before we do a final assembly, but first I want to verify this is going to fit on the Ninja 400 and work before I go all the way through the project itself. Let's go ahead and put the guide back in. You can see this has a clip right here, and then it has a relief, so this post can slide through it. The clip goes right there. Dip that in, like so. Slide the post through, verify that everything is as it should be. Okay, now for the throttle cables, the one without the adjuster goes in first. All right, slide it all the way down to the bottom, like so. Make sure it goes through the guide. Put your throttle tube in, just like that. Okay, this stuff has to be perfect, okay? There can be no issues, no binding, no conflicts. I'll slip the other one in. Goes on the outside. There is actually a locator tab that slides into this groove right here. Okay, hopefully you can see that. Grab the flashlight real quick. Okay, you look inside there, you see there's a little groove. Slip that together. Okay, now we'll take the other half. Of course, verifying that the cables are all properly routed. We're going to slide it over. This has the locator tab, okay, that interacts with the hole in the OEM clip-ons. Drop that in there. I'll just throw the screws in it right now. See if we can't get a good throttle adjustment, so on and so forth, before we go any deeper. Very important before you tighten these screws at all, you make sure that that button is in the hole in the OE clip-on. If you have aftermarkets, I'm sure you've drilled them too, you have a hole there, make sure it's in there, because if you try to tighten this down and that tab is not in there, and you put pressure on it, you can crack the throttle housing, which is something you do not want to do. Return feels really good. Kind of fiddle with the adjustment a little bit. Yeah, it all feels good too. Back that back off. It's also important, turn the bars when you check throttle snapback. You get the cables moving, simulating riding, actual riding. It's important that the throttle still snaps back without issue then. This all looks really good. I don't see any conflicts at all. This should work out. Okay, now I'm going to put the grip back on. We are going to put a set of Woodcraft clip-ons on this, actually, hopefully later today as well. I like to glue my grips. Everybody's different here, so I'm going to go ahead and feed some grip glue down in here. It's really important to know that when you use this, okay, you have to make sure that you don't have any excess underneath that throttle between the bar and throttle tube itself, and oftentimes sliding this over, it does create a situation where there is some of that. So what I'm going to do when I finish this install, the rest of the way, I'm actually going to take the throttle back off the bike and That's going to give me an opportunity to clean any excess that's underneath. Try to kind of get a nice thin film kind of all the way around on the inside there. Some people use hairspray, WD-40, all kinds of stuff. I like the glue. It's important to note, once you start, you want to get after it and get that thing on there. Okay, you see, look at all that excess right now. Let's go ahead and start wiping that off. Okay, and we can come back and clean it more as we continue. Now, super important right here. Okay, kind of work it all down flat. I want that grip right on the very end of that throttle tube, okay? And note the gap up here between the housing and the grip. Even when you slide it back and forth, there's always that little bit of play in there. That grip never comes in contact with that throttle housing. If it does, it'll grip it, and you can have a sticky throttle situation, which you don't want to have. Also, with the end of the throttle tube, make sure the grip is literally right there. If it's hanging over, okay, once again, that can grab on the clip-on. None of those are good things, okay? So I like where that's at now. Make sure the glue is all down, put a little pressure on it, and then we can leave this, right? We'll let it sit until tomorrow before the motorcycle is ridden. Now, clean up and lubricate the throttle. Just gonna take it right back off the bike. Slip your halves apart. Cables off the tube. And check that out. There is definitely some glue right here on the end. Okay. Wipe that off. Yeah, it takes just a second to take that tube off the bike, and that allows you to get in there and really make sure there's nothing in terms of glue under the sleeve. Make sure it's completely cleaned out, and then we're going to lubricate it and slide it back on. Okay, to lubricate, let's get a little bit of, this is just multi-purpose grease. I like to put it on the end of this old Phillips screwdriver that has the actual end cut off. Smooth the point out on it. Just get a nice thin film in there. A little bit on the bars here as well. I'll just kind of work that around. You don't want a lot here either, because too much, it's going to just attract and retain debris. Okay, and that's not a positive. So we'll do that. Let's get our tube and slip it back over. Just make sure everything's super smooth here. Okay, throttle cable. That in the channel. And the other one. Okay, now make sure the cable is installed in half here of the throttle assembly. Like so. Okay, hopefully you can get a good clear shot of that, Steve. So that one dips all the way down. The one with the adjuster is going to go on the outside. It's really clear how that goes. Once you have it apart, you'll see there's a tab. It's going to slide into that slot right there. Okay, like so. A little pressure on it, hold it together. You can see that's all good to go. Everything feels good. Grab the other half. I'll slide that over. Lined up. You have to find the locator hole, right, like so. Get our screws. curious to see if this is actually make a significant difference in the throttle throw. Okay, excess grease. Clean that off. Perfect snapback, so we're good there. If you're putting your OE bar end back on, let's put a little thread locker on there before we reinstall it. It is pretty important to use the thread locker on these bar ends. If you don't, there's a strong possibility, well, you're probably going to lose it while you're riding. Okay. Snug that up. Okay. Now it's time to adjust the throttle, the free play that you see right there. This is done right down here. Flashlight on this. The larger wheel, that is the jam nut, okay? That once you're done with the adjustment, you would then rotate this until it is seated against the other wheel. Okay, it's just going to lock it and hold it in place. For now, I'm going to back that off so we can rotate this. When you thread this out, it will tighten up the adjustment here, okay? You'll lose slack. When you thread it in, it's going to add play. Like you see all that right there. That's a lot. That's really excessive, and honestly, it makes it easier to ride the motorcycle if you dial the majority of that out. So we're going to try and take out as much as possible without having a negative impact on the throttle return. Okay, so it's really important, again, to pay attention to that throttle return. So I'll turn it out a little bit. Up here and feel it, it's still pretty loose. Starting to snug up a little. Okay, we're definitely getting there. Return is still really good. There's virtually no play at that point. Now, take and turn the bars. The tighter you go, the more it increases the chance that you'll have either a poor return, or when you sweep the bars with the bike running, and this is another important thing to do. When you're all done, you've got it buttoned up, start the bike up, okay? And just turn the bars back and forth. If you hear the accelerator pick up a little bit when you turn in one direction or the other, that's gonna indicate you definitely have that wound up too tight. You're gonna wanna back it off just a little bit, okay? So those things are all really important. You do that before you ride the bike. For my taste, I like it right where it's at right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten the lock up on the adjuster, like so. Okay, now I want to see, did this actually make a difference? So we're going to get the pinstriping back out to determine whether or not the throw is any shorter. Okay, it's a moment of truth right now. Did it make a difference? That is definitely under a quarter, okay? And at first, you know, we're both like, I don't know if that really changed it much, but you look at it and you can see that there is definitely a pretty significant reduction. It's not huge, but you know, every few degrees here, okay, is gonna definitely make a difference for the rider. So is this mod worth doing? Well, it's cheap. I'll tell you something else that's really cool with it is, you know, you're eliminating this ring up here, okay? So for the grips, kind of changes that a little bit, right? That's not bad, makes putting them back on easier, because remember the OE one kind of, I think, looped over that a little bit. None of the aftermarket stuff is going to do that. Yeah, I think it's worth doing. Super cheap. Do it at the same time you do the grips. I'm going to reiterate once again. We showed you what we did on the bike here. This part is listed for a 2003 to 2005 Yamaha R6, not for the Ninja 400. So this is really one of those at your own risk kind of things. I have to say that to cover my own ass, actually, okay? But if you follow the steps that you see here, we got a good result on our Ninja. I'm sure you'll get a good result on your Ninja if you're into doing this mod yourself. Lubrication. Gluing the grips, in my opinion, is always the right way to do it. And you can see the steps I took to make sure there's no glue underneath the throttle tube, really important. And throttle return. If you're not getting that positive snap, if you've done anything that's reduced that or hindered it in any way, you've created a serious safety issue. I want you to really understand that. I think I saw a reference to another mod out there where somebody was talking about removing the return cable. Don't ever do that. Don't ever take the return cable off your throttle. I think that is a humongous mistake, okay? You need that return cable in case something does happen, in case it does bind. That allows you then to manually rotate it back. You're then pulling that cable back, and it's gonna close the throttle blades for you, which is really important. You don't wanna get yourself in a situation where the thing's stuck wide open, okay, and you don't have the ability to turn it off. Sweep the bars, verify you still have a good, strong return. And then also start the motorcycle before you ride it and rotate the bars back and forth all the way to the stop and listen to see if the RPMs pick up at all on the bike. If they do, it indicates you've got the throttle adjusted a little bit too tight, the throttle cable. Just back it off just a little bit, put a little more free play in, and it should stop that from happening. So, the throttle tube mod for the Ninja, is it worth doing? I think so. It's really cheap. It worked great. I'm Brian Van, SportbikeTrackGear.com.